Today, we are diving into how artificial intelligence is reshaping Canada's manufacturing supply chains. Joining us is Hanyin Chen, co-founder and CEO of ASKaFOX, a Montreal-based company using AI to help manufacturers source critical suppliers faster and smarter. Hanyin, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you, Roger. Pleasure to be here.
Let's talk a little bit about ASKaFOX. What exactly does it do, and how are you incorporating AI?
So, ASKaFOX, we solve a very practical problem for manufacturers. That is, when supply chain disrupts, they need answers in days, not in 6 months. So we actually use AI models to help them find, qualify, and audit critical suppliers in a very short lead time. So let's take an example. An engineer can basically upload a technical specification of 30 to 50 pages, and AI will give the best recommendation of most qualified manufacturers, including Canadian ones, within seconds, and based on their real capabilities, not marketing claims.
And how does that compare to just an engineer with knowledge that says, well, we need to reach out to this person?
Yes, that is actually one of the key theses of AI revolution is engineers with deep knowledge today. We have a very limited amount for all our manufacturers. But today, AI capabilities can be expanded so that all these factories and manufacturers can benefit from that same deep domain knowledge.
And what models are you using to build this for your customers?
At ASKaFOX, we are a big believer of open models. So basically, we will tune on different models, including Canadian ones, that we want to make sure that our customers get the best experience out of it.
And can you talk about what are the Canadian ones?
So today, there's one thing I think it's very important that people sometimes tend to neglect, that Canada is one of the leading forces in the world in terms of AI development. Actually, it was one of the places that the modern AI emerged. And here in Canada, we have a lot of accessibilities, which are not granted in other countries, for us to get helped and accompanied by those, I would say, R&D institutions. Mm-hmm. And in our case, ASKaFOX, at our early days, we were just building a faster horses until someday that we got introduced to, for instance, a manufacturing institute, and who helped us build, I would say, motors instead. And that experience has been really instrumental in our development.
And are you seeing Canada remain on the forefront when it comes to AI? I'm kind of diverging for a second, but I want to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, today actually we operate in US, Europe, and also across Asia, and we see something which is kind of puzzling, is the adoption of AI in our manufacturers actually stagnates. I think that's for a reason. I think for decades, Canada has really enjoyed a very relatively stable development course, I would call geopolitical stability resources, which I think reduced a certain urgency of investing in technology if we compare to the other parts of the world where the competition is much more fierce and companies are driven to make more out of those investments. But I think Canadian companies now have come to a realization that the productivity is absolutely the key issue, and AI is here to help. So that's definitely positive on the trend of Canadian companies adopting that.
And has that been driven by the trade war, do you think, with the U.S.?
Absolutely. Absolutely. In our very specific case, since the COVID, the supply chain disruptions is no longer exception. It's becoming the new norm. And as a manufacturer, basically you have two options. Either you think you can predict every uncertainty, mm-hmm. or you can try to build a very solid yet credible plan B, thanks to the technology. So that is why here in ASKaFOX, we often say that when predictions fail, options prevail. So you don't need to beat the odds. You just need to beat your competitors when disruption hits. Definitely today, with the trade tensions with the U.S., the global, I think, the logistic shocks, we don't lack motivations to build plan Bs for ourselves.
And talking about how you can pivot quickly when you're using the AI, what about just on a more day-to-day for a company? How can this be utilized?
Yeah. One of the things that we actually noticed is, actually, next 2 decades, the global supply chain actually worked. That is why companies, not only in Canada, felt less in need to invest in technology or to build plan Bs, because no one wanted to going through the hassle, like we said, to change partners. But as what we see today, the global supply chain disruptions are becoming operational resilience issues rather than optimization center. Mm-hmm. So that is being said, the companies, they are no longer reluctant in investing on maybe the dollar price of the product, because whenever there's a disruption for 6 months, let's say a factory slows down or assembly line close, the hidden cost is much more important. That is why we have seen Canadian companies shift to local Canadian manufacturers that they didn't even know existed. That was, if you were asking why didn't they bother asking around? Because once again, they didn't need to. The global supply chain worked for 2 decades until last 3 to 5 years.
Okay, Han-Yin, thank you very much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Great pleasure to be here.
Han-Yin
Thank you
Chen,
for the invitation.
Cheers, thank you. Han-Yin Chen is co-founder and CEO of ASKaFOX. Coming up, Lindsay Biscaya, it's like I've never heard of her. Lindsay Biscaya hosts a special roundtable discussion on the commodities that made news in 2025 with BNN's Andy Bell and Bloomberg's Derek DeClue. Stick around.